Get the home field advantage every time with Fairfield by Marriott, official hotel partner of the NCAA. Whether you're a student athlete working toward your championship dreams or your team's biggest fan, Fairfield by Marriott has everything you need to get ready for game day. From comfortable guest rooms to complimentary hot breakfast, Fairfield is part of the Marriott Bonvoy portfolio of hotels and official hotel partner of the NCAA. Visit fairfield.marriott.com to book your next game day stay.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts and Q&A lets us be more creative on another level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Welcome into The Verge, a show which covers the Baltimore Orioles minor leagues. The Verge is part of BSL Radio. Baltimore Sports and Life is dedicated to analysis and discussion on the Orioles, Baltimore Ravens, and the University of Maryland. The site has a team of writers providing coverage of those teams and houses live streaming content weekly. Join the conversations at the message board, like BSL on Facebook, and follow BSL on Twitter.
Welcome to On the Verge, coming to you on a day that Orioles history was made. May 5th, 2021, John Means throws a no-hitter against the Seattle Mariners in Seattle in an excellent start. 9 shutout innings, 12 strikeouts, and the Orioles come away with a 6-0 win. So we're going to get into Means' historic performance, but we are also a minor league podcast, and we are going to get into the minor league opening day as well, which took place yesterday, and have our early reaction on some of the standout performances, including starts by D.L. Hall and Grayson Rodriguez, as well as the home run by Gunnar Henderson that, if you're like me, you've been watching on a continuous loop since yesterday. So on the Verge, Zach Spedden here, along with Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, as always. And we'll be breaking that down tonight. But first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business that was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful, historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. So John Means has been off to an excellent start in 2021, and that got even better today as he threw a no-hitter against the Seattle Mariners. 9 innings, no hits, no runs, no walks, 12 strikeouts. So Means coming down with what I would have to guess is probably one of the single best starts in Orioles history, if not the best, in that win over the Mariners. The first time any Oriole has thrown a no-hitter since 1990, that was a combined no-hitter. The last person to throw a no-hitter on their own in an Orioles uniform was Jim Palmer back in 1969. So you have to go a long way back to find the last time that this happened in Orioles history, that a pitcher completed a no-hitter from start to finish. So, Bob, just your reaction to this.
Oh, it was so exciting. I haven't been that nervous since we were in the playoffs a few years ago. I mean, at first it was like, oh, yeah, he's perfect, quote-unquote perfect, through 5 or 6 innings. It's like, yeah, it'll get broken up at some point or something will happen. But no, it just kept going, and it was good to feel those nerves. It was like a first meaningful game, it felt like, since 2016, maybe 2017. So it was awesome. I think it's also the first time in Major League history that it's a no-hitter where the only runner reached on a strikeout that got away from the catcher. So he has that glorious distinction. Thanks, Pedro. Not voting for you. But yeah, it was awesome. It was spectacular. I was lucky enough to see it from start to finish. Actually, I recorded a podcast directly in the middle with Locked on Orioles, which should be out later in the week. It was supposed to be yesterday. Thanks, John.
So I've only missed one Orioles game all year, and it was the John Means no-hitter this afternoon. Coming home from work, getting stuck in traffic, and then having a 1.5-year-old lose his mind as I came home. But super exciting. I'll watch it tomorrow. Pretend like I don't know what happens. No, it's pretty cool. I think you mentioned one of the best starts in Orioles history. I did see a tweet from Joe Trezza. I mean, just reading all of the tweets about this historic moment and where it stands in Major League Baseball history, not just Orioles history, but I think Joe Trezza it is the second highest game score ever. I think it was a 99. And the only person who beat him out was a 111. And I forget the name, and I shouldn't have, and I apologize, but he threw like 15 or 16 like shutout innings, something absurd. So, I mean, it was an historic day for John Means. I don't think it could happen to a better person after everything he went through last year. And I absolutely love that story of him looking down at his glove before he went out in the ninth inning and seeing his dad's initials on his glove. Like that hits hard. I mean, it's hitting me right now just thinking about it. I didn't even watch the game, but just seeing that tweet, like that hits pretty hard. So awesome job for John Means, and I can't wait to actually watch the game tomorrow.
Yeah, it was really special that of all the pitchers that could throw a no-hitter for the Orioles, obviously we would be happy if anybody did it, but the fact that it was Means, it's just a little bit more special, I think.
Yeah. Oh, totally representative of this turnaround. You know, he started getting good. He showed up the same time Mike Elias and company did. I just feel like it's very symbolic, and hopefully it's a great sign of things to come. I guess he was reading the Ace debate on Twitter, so he put an end to that.
Yeah. And I don't think that his story gets told enough. I mean, Orioles fans, we know it and we bring it up all the time, but even then, like, I don't think people truly understand, I mean, how close this guy was to quitting. And I remember when he was in the minor leagues, specifically when he was in Bowie, and I mean, his starts were just meh. I mean, he was another guy. He was a 4 or 5 back end starter in a double-A rotation. He might give you 5-6 innings and give up 4 or 5 runs and it'd be an okay start, but nothing memorable really. And now look at him. He's an all-star. He's got a no-hitter. Maybe that extension's coming. Who knows?
Let's hope. Maybe a Cy Young.
Don't rule it out right now. It's the start he's on. I would not be shocked to see his name come up in Cy Young races if he continues this. So just to throw out some facts and figures, this was the first Orioles no-hitter since 1991. The Orioles defeated the A's on July 13th of that year with a combined no-hitter from Bob Milacki, Mike Flanagan, Mark Williamson, and Greg Olson. The Joe Trezza tweet that Nick mentioned, the 99 game score is tied with Mike Flanagan's start on August 15th, 1979, for the second best since the team moved to Baltimore in 1954. The highest was 111 from Jerry Walker on September 11th, 1959, when he threw 16 shutout innings. So good stats there from Joe Trezza. But that, coming in with what's the second, tied for the second best game score in Orioles history, John Means today.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, and I should throw this out there, too, because we've now seen the Mariners quite a bit, and this is the last time, actually, we're going to see the Mariners this year, I believe. But that's not a slouch of a lineup. There's some good hitters in there. That is not a lineup that you can really take for granted. So it's not like Means went out today and beat a AAA team. This is a decent team with a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, I think that's a team that I think a lot of people figured, especially after last year, that they're probably only a year away. You figure by the end of this year and opening day next year, for sure, they're going to have Jared Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez and all those stud outfielders that they have. So this team is pretty close to being a playoff team, maybe closer because the AL West is kind of a mad division. But yeah, definitely a good team and on the road. So kudos to John Means. I don't think Orioles fans are going to live this down anytime soon, and we shouldn't. We should keep this going as long as possible.
Exactly.
This makes the whole season. Oh, sorry,
Agreed.
Zach.
No, I think you're right, Bob.
And I know Seattle had the 29th best/worst batting average in baseball, but they got a lot of talented guys to hit for power. And he just saw them like a week or two ago, and they hit a couple home runs off of him. So it's very impressive. That Kyle Lewis ball, I thought it was gone, but I'm glad it only went to the wall.
Yeah, so there's a lot to, John Means, congratulations on the no-hitter. It makes the season, but maybe things only go up from here for the Orioles. We'll see. But if this is the highlight of 2021, it's a very good one. We'll now turn our attention down to the minor leagues as minor league opening day took place on Tuesday, and it started off pretty good for a lot of the Orioles' top prospects. DL Hall put up an excellent start in Altoona, striking out 10 in 4 1/3. Grayson Rodriguez getting off to a good debut at Aberdeen as well. And Gunnar Henderson hitting a home run on one of the smoothest swings I think we will see all year, going opposite field at Purdue Stadium down in Salisbury, which is not easy. So we'll get into some of the highlights from the minor leagues, the start of the minor league season now. And currently, as we're recording this, Delmarva and Salem are resuming a game that was suspended on Tuesday night. The Shorebirds are up 7-4. Actually, they just finished it out. Shelton Perkins comes in and gets the final out. So the Shorebirds win that one 7-4. So Nick, Shelton Perkins, friend of the show now?
I mean, yeah, it's my guy. I've watched I don't think I've ever missed a Shelton Perkins outing over the last 3 years. So that's awesome to see that he came in the game. I definitely can't wait till after the show to go back and watch that. I'm proud of that kid. He deserves all of this.
So we'll talk about the Westberg home run for a minute. On Tuesday night when this game started, Henderson went opposite field in the first inning, hitting a ball out to left center field for a 2-run homer. And the reaction, including from some players in the Orioles farm system, is that you just don't see that a lot in Delmarva. And I think that tells you how much strength Gunnar Henderson has. And Bob, I'm curious to get your thoughts, as I'm sure you've seen the home run, and what you think Henderson's swing looks like.
Yeah, I was watching it live, and the camera angle wasn't like your typical Major League camera angle. It's like behind bird's eye view from like the press box area, and to me, man, it was a beautiful swing. It just seemed effortless, almost like a Chris Davis, vintage Chris Davis opposite field blast, just smooth, just sent a rocket. I was surprised how far it went. It was over 400 feet, very opposite field, not even close to center. It was just a blast. It was fun to watch. And of course, the rain came and washed the game away. But I'm glad that the home run still counts because that was impressive.
I mean, this was his very first at bat in full season minor league ball, and he showed off that strength he has. I think we got a quick glimpse in his very first at bat of why every single outlet out there hyped up Gunnar Henderson before the season started. And he made a good defensive play too in that first inning before he hit that home run as well. Some smooth out there at shortstop, so he can play shortstop. He does have a good arm. There's only one play, I know, but look, we're going to overhype all of this, and that's great. But I mean, I remember after I tweeted out the video, and I was like, I'm going to go to bed later on. I'm trying to go to sleep after like putting out all these highlights, watching these games, trying to get off this high of minor league baseball coming back. And then I just keep reading all of the comments to that Gunnar Henderson video. And it was, you see Grayson Rodriguez in his comment says, people don't hit that ball out there. Just all the comments from players, like you mentioned, in the system, guys hyping each other up. It was just absolutely amazing to see. Baseball America, I think it was Kyle Glazer, who was like, look, this is why we put him on our top 100 list now. He's showing you exactly why. I mean, this is exactly what Orioles fans wanted to see. And we got it night one down on the farm system.
You know, I'm not a huge fan of comparisons because sometimes I think they get a little oversimplified. Like I know that Baseball America readers of a certain age will remember when every center field prospect was compared to Mike Cameron. It seemed like we had about a decade of that. But the Corey Seager, Gunnar Henderson comp, I'm almost there on it. Just because I've seen Henderson swing enough now that it does remind me of Corey Seager a little bit. I don't know if he's going to be the exact same type of player, but you know, both are guys that are bigger for shortstops. Good left-handed strokes with a lot of power. It obviously remains to be seen if Henderson does stick at shortstop long term, but comparison-wise, I don't know that that's far off.
It makes sense. I mean, they're both big, powerful guys, and that'd be great if he could ever be as good as Corey Seager. That's a home run right there. So almost as big of a home run as he hit last night.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that Orioles fans want to see some of these middle infield prospects hit. And we're talking about one inning of one game because we haven't gone back and watched the conclusion of that game yet. And I don't know what he did in that first game, and they got another game tonight. It's a long season. This is just the very beginning. But, I mean, first at bat to show that, I mean, this guy might be legit. Maybe he's not going to be at Delmarva for very long because maybe all those reports out of camp were true. about the progression he's made. And if that's the case, then this is an exciting guy that the Orioles have down the farm system, a legitimate exciting prospect to join the DL Halls and Grayson Rodriguez.
So before we move on from Delmarva, I do want to note Jordan Westberg was hitting behind Henderson in that game. Henderson batting third and Westberg batting fourth. Westberg in his professional debut goes 2 for 5 with an RBI while playing at third base. Again, a small sample size, but a good start for him. And I'll be curious to see how the Shorebirds, and we talked about this a lot on our last show, how the Shorebirds are going to manage this infield, because there are so many players that are going to need at-bats. But I'll be interested to see how Westberg looks at third base if they give him an extended trial there.
I've seen, too, at the AAA level, and we already seen with Tyler Nevin, skip ahead a little bit, but we already seen the Orioles move Tyler Nevin around down there. He played first base first night, then he went out right field today. And so I think you're going to see that at all levels of the minor leagues. Westberg, Henderson, this Anthony Servideo was DHing the first night, which is weird to see. But you got so many talents down there and so few spots. But you're going to see this massive rotation, I think, in Delmarva all year round as they try to figure out, first of all, how do they get the most at-bats out of them? And then we'll figure out down the road what position is best. For right now, I think it's just the most important thing is just getting at-bats.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think you'll even see Henderson and Westberg swap positions for the second game of this weird doubleheader. Yeah, I think Elias and them, they covet that positional flexibility, and I think they're going to give everyone every chance to master as many positions as they can to give themselves more options once they get to the major league level.
So moving up the farm system now, the Aberdeen Ironbirds were at their regional rival Wilmington Blue Rocks last night and got a 10-1 win in a game that really saw the Ironbirds bats take off in the late innings, because it was actually only 2-0 going into the sixth. Then they scored 2 in the sixth, 3 in the seventh, then added 3 more in the ninth to round out what was a 10-1 victory. Grayson Rodriguez in his debut at the high A level goes 4 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, and he's followed in relief by 2 very good outings, one from Ryan Wilson, who delivered 3 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts, and then Garrett Farmer came in and pitched the last 2 frames. Sorry about that. Wilson actually did give up a run, but it was unearned. Farmer comes in with 2 shutout innings to round out the game with 2 strikeouts. I know the focus for most listeners is on Rodriguez. I didn't get to see much video from this game. There actually was no video from this game last night, but we do have a tweet from DL Hall that Grayson Rodriguez, I believe, apparently hit 101.
That's absurd. This is absolutely absurd. I didn't believe it when I saw that tweet from DL Hall, and then Orioles Player Development also tweeted that out. So it's true. It's confirmed. I'm taking that as confirmed. The video out of Aberdeen is going to be pretty sparse. I mean, out of Aberdeen, there is not going to be any video. So we're only going to get the rare road games where they do have a feed. So, like, Bob, this is on you this year to get the videos of Grayson Rodriguez pumping 101 miles an hour out this year. But, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more out of him in that first start. And just 1 hit allowed across 4 innings. That's solid. 5 strikeouts is good. At 63 pitches, I was figuring he'd probably go 60, maybe 70 max. So I'm curious to see how the Orioles treat Grayson Rodriguez this year now after that first start, and to see how dominant he was and see him throwing 101 miles an hour, apparently. I'm curious to see how long they're going to keep the gloves on him or when they're going to let him loose down there in Aberdeen.
Yeah, if you're watching the video or the live stream of this, I was trying to do that eyeball emoji in real life. And because that's what my reaction was when I saw that tweet. I don't know how much we can trust the source, but I think it's pretty fair to say he must have done it because that's pretty crazy. But I did get an email from the PR department at Aberdeen that they're going to just have a typical 5-man starting rotation and typical bullpen. So I wouldn't think that he's just going to be a 4 innings every time out piggyback type situation. I would think that he's just going to have to build up a little bit, maybe 6 innings occasionally, but mostly just trying to get 5 innings out of him like they did last year. And yeah, super impressive. I just don't even know what to say with him. I just cannot wait to get out there and watch him live in person and finally get Orioles fans some video.
Yeah, Nick, you mentioned the pitch count earlier. I'm expecting that with Rodriguez and Hall, especially, that we are going to see the Orioles be a little bit cautious. But what do you think maybe the way that they build him up over these first few starts? Do you think it's going to be in that 60 to 75 pitch range?
I'd probably say yeah, just because the other thing too that keeps creeping in your mind, and I know I've heard other people kind of debate this, especially like all year, going from 60 games to 162 games at the pro level, and then the minor league going from alt site, no real games, scrimmages, controlled environments, to these real minor league games in real environments with fans, weather conditions. It's raining everywhere at all these sites now, it seems like, for the Orioles. And so, but at the end, the debate being, do you just let guys go out there and throw? These are professional pitchers. They're used to it. Maybe their arms are fresh at this point after a year of not pitching, versus hold them back, kind of baby them a little bit so they don't get hurt. But then what we've seen is just massive amounts of injuries this year. And seeing a guy like Dustin May go down the other day, like, that's scary to see the constant flow of people on the injured list. And so I don't want to be talking about that right now, but I mean, I think that's something we got to think about. So I think they take Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall along pretty slowly.
Yeah, it's crazy. What is it? The Brewers had like 17 players on their injured list at one point in time. So yeah, injuries are definitely a big factor this year. And I think you're right. They gotta be careful.
Yeah, so a couple of offensive highlights there from Aberdeen. Kyle Stowers goes 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs in the opener. Joey Ortiz, who we've heard some hype from the Orioles about coming into this season, got off to a big debut, going 3 for 5 out of the cleanup spot. You would think a 10-1 win, you might have more than one home run, but there were 2. So Reiser hits 1 in the 6th, and Stowers hits 1 in the 7th. So overall, an impressive night for the Ironbirds, 11 hits. So a good start for that lineup, especially for Kyle Stowers, Joey Ortiz, and Johnny Reiser.
Absolutely.
I mentioned on our hitter preview that I want to see that outfield group of Reiser, Stowers, and Zach Watson. Which one of those guys is going to step up this year and take the lead in that outfield and then kind of cement themselves on this prospect list? I know Johnny Reiser is not a top 30 guy, but can he force his way into that conversation? More so looking at Zach Watson and Kyle Stowers. And Stowers didn't strike out last night as well, so he's off on the right foot. That's something important to say. So one game.
Yeah, I was just going to say – oh, sure, yeah. I was just going to say that it's cool. I feel like these guys – I feel like I'm repeating myself because I said a lot of this stuff on the Locked On Orioles podcast, if anyone's going to listen to that. But it's just so cool that they were drafted together. They've pretty much played together every stop along the way. They're starting the season at Aberdeen in high A together. And I feel like that competitiveness between them is going to help things a little bit. They all did something in that game last night. Watson had a single and a stolen base. Stowers crushed one and had a single. And then obviously Reiser had a couple extra base hits. So it's just great. I think these guys, none of them are on my personal top 30 list, but all 3 of them could force their way onto it by the end of the season, depending on how things go.
Yeah, Reiser was a guy who back in 2019 drew a lot of interest because after getting drafted out of TCU, he slashed 308, 365, 465, so batting average on base, slugging percentage, in 63 games between Aberdeen and Delmarva. And his batting average actually went up a little bit with the move to Delmarva. So he hit well at 2 levels in a short, after the draft. So he was a guy that going into 2020 was drawing a little bit of interest, and I think would have been on the edge of some top 30 lists if he was not in them already. But then, we saw what happened with 2020, and I don't know that Reiser was completely forgotten about, but it was also not a name that was necessarily at the forefront of my mind coming into this year as a top 30 prospect, yet the performance he put up in 2019, I think, got close to putting him in that conversation.
I'm curious, though, if he's an advanced college bat, too. Is he at TCU? I think he is.
Yes.
So, yeah, he's got that advanced pedigree, and I think he has a really high floor, but I'm not sure how much more he has, like as far as development, how much more the Orioles going to get out of him, which I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's a solid player right now, but this could be a guy who's really good that you want to keep around in your AAA system for a long time once he gets to that level. And that if you need an emergency outfielder, this is a guy who can play defense. He's got speed, and he can hit a little bit too. So he's a perfect guy to fill in emergencies and have around.
Yeah, he's absolutely a player that he's going to serve his purpose. He might be a little bit more towards the organizational player type of deal, but he's definitely a solid one to have. And who knows, maybe if he just continues to rake, he'll eventually get his chance to do it at the major league level.
So Aberdeen is playing Wilmington right now in the second game of their series, and I'll rattle off this highlight as they're up 2-1 in the top of the seventh. This was a professional debut for Garrett Stallings, who goes 5 innings, 6 hits, 1 run. It was earned, no walks, and 4 strikeouts. So an excellent start to the season for Garrett Stallings.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see him pitch this year. There's got to be a reason they targeted him in that Iglesias trade, the scouting that they were doing at the alternate site. Obviously, we've heard about his increased velocity over the offseason and his vaunted control that he had at Tennessee. And he showed that here with 5 innings and no walks and 4 strikeouts. I mean, you'll take that every time. So, and he had to be nervous. I mean, it's been 2 years since he was drafted, and he's just now making his a professional debut. That's got to be crazy. But yeah, good for him, and I hope he keeps it up and makes his way to Bowie at some point this season.
Yeah, we're seeing all these Angels guys now. We saw Zach Peak last night down in Delmarva for 2 innings. He did give up 3 runs. He gave up a home run, but he had 3 strikeouts. He looked pretty solid, as solid as we can look as we can get with the camera angle they have in Delmarva. But I'm not complaining because we have a camera in Delmarva now. But we saw him a little bit, and then those numbers are fantastic for Garrett Stallings. We saw Kyle Bradish and Bowie when we talk about Bowie here in a second. So it's fun. I think Brnovich is going tomorrow or Friday. He's going soon in Aberdeen as well. I think he follows up Garrett Stallings tomorrow down in Aberdeen. So it's exciting to finally see these Angels guys and show us what they got down there.
Yeah, and here's a stat that I'm going to throw out for Stallings from tonight that I think is impressive. 64 pitches, 45 strikes.
That's taken every time.
Yeah, same thing with Zach Peak. I'm trying to find his. I wrote them down. Zach Peak had 31 pitches, 23 strikes. So if you want to know why my class is targeting these Angels guys, they throw strikes, they strike guys out, they don't walk guys. There you go.
And update as we speak, Zach Watson just hit an RBI triple. So
nice. So Aberdeen off to a good start right now. And now we're going to get into Bowie. And before we get into the opener from Tuesday, because there's a lot to unpack there, and Nick was also at the Bay Sox Media Day earlier this week and has some insight that he can share on air. I'll give a quick rundown of what's happening right now in Game 2 of that series at Altoona. Bay Sox are up 6-2 going into the 9th inning. So far for the highlights offensively, Robert Newstrom, 2 for 3 on the night. Adley Rutzman got his first hit at Double-A. He's 1 for 4 and is actually playing first base. On the mound, Kyle Bradish makes his debut, goes 4 2/3 innings, 2 hits allowed, no runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. He gets through that outing in 72 pitches. So that game is not finished yet with the Bay Sox up 6-2, but a couple of notable prospects putting up good performances there.
Yeah, I tried to watch a few innings of that game earlier before we came on the air. So to Bruce's question about how did Bradish's stuff look, again, trying to console a 1.5-year-old as I'm watching this. And Altoona's feed, I don't know what is going on in Altoona, but Bob, you mentioned this last night in our chat. They have a lot of cameras at Altoona, and they are beautiful HD cameras. Great job, Altoona. But your center field camera is complete garbage. I don't know what it is. And then today, just that view, whenever the pitcher moves, it's like super slow-mo, and then the ball's shoots out. And I don't know what's going on there. So I could not pay attention. It hurt my eyes to try to watch that as much as I wanted to. I wanted to see what Kyle Bradish's stuff looked like. It looked like it had a lot of movement because it starts in his hand and ends it in the dirt, and the guy's swinging. I don't know how it gets to that point, but there we go. Yeah, so the numbers were good. I mean, hopefully the feed gets fixed tomorrow, but we can go off the numbers, I guess, because Altoona, you're killing us.
Yeah. I did. I looked at that game. I was right before we came on. I was like, let me just see, because I noticed that they were playing. Kyle Bradish was doing pretty good, so I'm like, let me jump on here, see if I can catch a glimpse of him. And we were batting, we/Bowie, and like you said, it was so glitchy with that one camera angle, which looks like a zoomed in iPhone 7 from a mile away. It's so blurry and terrible. While every other camera is immaculate, professional level. It's insane. I have no idea what's going on there, but yeah. hopefully, I mean, the numbers look good for Bradish tonight. That is impressive. It just seems like Bowie's rotation is just going to strike out like 14 batters per 9. And I'm hoping to get a chance to see him next week with a real camera.
Yeah, so, while we don't have, enough yet to go off as far as how his stuff looks, there's been a lot of positive reports about his velocity. Sounds like he's been pretty consistently hitting the mid-90s leading up to this season, working out down in Sarasota. And, if the strikeout total is any indication, 7 4 2/3, the stuff was there for him tonight. So we're certainly going to be watching Bradish closely as the year goes on. Going back to Tuesday night's game, though, the big highlight there is the performance by DL Hall. 4 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, struck out 10. I watched most of that start for Hall, and I don't know how Altoona could touch him because of the way that his fastball and all of his off-speed pitches were moving as they got into the strike zone. It looked like a lot of late movement. And now keep in mind that I heard this mentioned off the stadium gun. We don't always know how accurate stadium guns are, but Altoona's announcers were mentioning velocities basically in the 97 to 99 range for Hall last night. And, from what I could tell in the video feed, it looked like it was every bit of that coming out of his hand.
Yeah, he did walk 2 batters and he hit a batter. So obviously the command is it's always going to be the make or break for DL Hall. It's command because his stuff is electric. He's got that fastball is incredible. 3 major league quality breaking pitches that all do what they're supposed to do. Sky's the limit with him. It all comes down to command. He is so impressive. It's hard to see him stay at Bowie. If he's going to pitch like this every time out, he can't be sticking around at Bowie for too long. He was sensational.
Yeah, I don't think we can underestimate how big that performance was last night from Hall, just because the weather, that muddy mound as well. Opening night against a pretty good Altoona team. They got some guys. O'Neal Cruz is in that lineup. J1 Bay, I think, is in that top of that lineup. It's a solid Pittsburgh minor league lineup down there. But I mean, was that Tuesday, Monday? I don't know which day it was. I think it was Monday. I did attend the preseason Zoom call, and it had Bowie Bay Sox manager Buck Britton was on there. Adley Rutschman hopped on. DL Hall hopped on. But Buck Britton said that pitching is going to be the backbone of this roster for Bowie. And right now they're showing that with Hall's starts and Bradish's start. And I want to talk about another pitcher in Bowie, too, at the end of this. But, he mentioned that DL Hall he said his quote was, "This guy's becoming a polished pitcher. He's commanding the ball much better now." He used one word to describe his spring training, and he said dominant, that he's got control of all 4 of his pitches. Adley Rutschman had huge praise for DL Hall as well. And then when Hall came on, he said, "I probably only walked 3 guys all spring." And for DL Hall to say that, a guy who across his career is walking almost 5 per game, like, I know that's spring training, but that's still huge. And so I know there's a lot of, okay, but let's see that in a game. And he comes out opening night and he shows that in a game, that command that he has. Like, yeah, the curveball always wasn't super tight and sharp. He, like Bob mentioned, he did hit a guy, he did walk 2 batters, but he struck out 10, which I think tied a career high or was a career high. Just a fantastic start for DL Hall. So let's keep this rolling. And him and Rutschman, I tried to watch that a little bit. That connection him and Rutschman had, like, you already see that. And so that's awesome to see.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the big takeaways from me is that I agree with Nick. You could tell that there was a little bit of a connection there. And, I think that if you strike out 10 batters on the first day of the season, especially when you haven't pitched in a competitive game in, about 19 months, if you walk 4 batters, I'm okay with that. Honestly, for the first time out, the fact that it was only at 2, I actually thought was a good thing. Obviously we want to see him get better as the year goes on and see him get a little bit deeper in the games than he did last night. But 2 walks when you're striking out 10 and not giving up a run is good.
Absolutely. I mean, those hitters look like they were just closing their eyes and swinging as hard as they could. Like, that was the only chance they had. The walk, if he's not walking them, they weren't touching him. Even the one hit that he gave up, I think it was a double hit, one of the last batters he faced, it could have been caught. I mean, it was a nice attempt out there in center field, just missed. So the guy is electric. He is electric.
we're sitting here talking about DL Hall throwing 99, and I believe one of those innings came in like the third inning, late in the third inning too, where one of the announcers mentioned a 99, if I'm not mistaken. I had so many issues with my feed. I actually didn't watch this game until about 10 o'clock last night because I could not get the Bowie game to load, and I almost gave up, but good thing I did it. We're talking about DL Hall and his dominant start throwing 99, and Grayson Rodriguez throwing 101 on a night when John Means throws a no-hitter, a near-perfect game. Like, who says Orioles can't develop pitching? Like, this is a team. We're talking about a lot of solid pitching here. This is exciting. I don't know what else to say.
It's incredibly exciting, and those three guys, hopefully they're the top of our rotation in a year or two. Just think of that.
Hey, it could see that. I did want to throw this out there, and it's early, and we don't know a lot about Terrin Vavra yet. He did go 2 for 5 in that opener, and his first hit was actually a line drive single back up the middle. And I loved what I saw from his swing on that little bit of a clip. You could definitely see that line drive stroke that we've heard so much about on that base hit. Obviously we'll see how he adjusts to going straight from low A to double A after not having a minor league season last year, but at least for that game, I thought he looked pretty good.
He did, and I enjoyed that hit as well. And the thing with this Bowie lineup as a whole, opening night, they struck out 17 times, and they only walked once. And I know it's opening night, but that's still an extreme number. And I don't know what the numbers were today. And look at what they're doing today. But the little bit I watched, I know there's a lot of strikeouts going on down there as well. But you've got big boppers like Adley Rutschman, who struck out 3 times, I think, opening night. So, of course, burn it all to the ground. Rebuild's over. Adley Rutschman's a bust. Spencer Torkelson, I think, was also 0 for 3 last night. So Detroit, blow that up. Rebuild's over in Detroit too. Robert Newstrom is in this lineup. J.C. Escarra is in this lineup. You've got some guys, a lot of power guys in this Bowie lineup. And I think it's going to take a long time for them to settle in and find their strokes. But Terrin Vavra came out of the gates hot, and he's the guy that you want to see do that, collect those base hits. He's not going to hit 20 home runs this year. But I want to see him get on base. I want to see what his defense looks like as well, because I think I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago that Vavra is kind of like the Swiss Army knife player. I kind of get the vibe that the Orioles desperately need up at the major league level.
Yeah, so tonight the Bowie Bay Sox have struck out 15 times, and they still have to bat in the 9th inning. But they did walk 6 times this time around. Professional hitter Terrin Vavra, he has a couple walks on the night. And, he's a hit machine. I feel like you said with Johnny Reiser, his floor is pretty high. It's just a matter of can he reach the ceiling. So, to me, I think he's going to thrive at AA Bowie. And I initially had him at play Norfolk, which is definitely a little overreaching, but I think he could get there at some point. I think, as soon as Jahmai Jones, and Rylan Bannon and Richie Martin are all up at the major league level, I think Terrin Vavra could even see himself up to AAA.
So on that note, we're going to head up to Norfolk now, and the Tides have been involved in some high-scoring games to start the year, and on the losing end of both of them. Today they drop a 10-7 contest to the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, an afternoon affair, but for some positives out of that lineup, Jahmai Jones, who Bob just mentioned, goes 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs, hit a triple in that game, also hit a home run. Tyler Nevin hits his 2nd home run of the year as part of a 2 for 4 performance. Rylan Bannon goes 0 for 4 but does draw a walk. Stevie Wilkerson goes 2 for 5. Ryan Ripken was a 2 for 4 performance. So some of the bats in Norfolk getting going even as the pitching staff gets off to a slow start down there.
It was a tough few games for Norfolk, but I mean, look at the pitchers that Norfolk threw out there. I mean, it was Connor Green and Cody Carroll were 2 guys that got shelled opening night. And I think the Jacksonville announcers said it best, that especially when Connor Green was pitching, they mentioned that they weren't even competitive pitches. Like, they're not competitive balls. I mean, these were balls that are foot or more off the plate. It was not a good night for Connor Green. Today it was Josh Rogers. Again, he hasn't pitched it's almost 2 years to the day that he was last on the mound because he had his second Tommy John surgery. And then right after him was Jay Flaw. Jay Flaw kind of got rocked. But we haven't seen Zach Lothar, Alex Wells, or Keegan Aiken down there from Norfolk yet. So that's the good part when you're looking at the Norfolk pitching.
Yeah, I was going to say, we projected this amazing Norfolk rotation with Kevin Smith, Zach Lothar, Alexander Wells, Bruce Zimmerman, Keegan Aiken, all these guys. It's hard. It's going to be hard to win when you're throwing, no offense, Josh Rogers and Connor Green out there to start. But yeah, that was tough. Cody Carroll, man, he's still punishing me for picking him as the breakout player of last year. And but on the plus side, pitching, it was nice to see Marcos Diplan and Manny Barreda get out there, pitch pretty well, and Dustin Knight had a nice outing today. So you always got to find your silver linings.
Yeah, so going back to the lineup for a minute, and this is one of the clips is Alan at BSL on the Verge, our Twitter feed. Tyler Nevin goes opposite field with a home run in yesterday's game. We've heard a lot about that all-fields approach, and we saw it a little bit there with that home run. But he's off to a good start at the plate. Nick, what are you seeing from him to this point?
You wanted the power, and there you go. He's showing you the power already. 2 games, 2 home runs, the opposite field shot. The one today almost left the stadium. I mean, he annihilated that baseball today. He also played a really good first base on opening night. They had him in right field today. I know he had the one play where he let a ball skip under his glove and go to the wall. That was but I'll forgive him because he jacked that home run today. Again, kind of like the deal with Terrin Vavra. This is a guy who can play, but different profile, obviously. But Nevin can play both corner infield spots. He can play both corner outfield spots. You can DH him if you need him to. So if he's going to hit for power like this is what people want to see. And so if he keeps this up, this is a guy that the Orioles can bring up very soon, I think. He's not a top prospect that the Orioles are going to worry about, any service time or any of that stuff with Tyler Nevin. If he's hitting, bring him up in that lineup, and he's going to make a difference, especially now. I mean, how many teams in Major League Baseball have a winning record? The Orioles are close to 500. I'm not saying the Orioles are going to win, but you go out there, you put him in that lineup, maybe it makes a difference. You start winning a few more games.
Yeah, wasn't the question in Colorado, was he going to be able to tap into that raw power in games? Well, so far so good on that front. And it looks like the K-vest that the Orioles are using and all this stuff, maybe they got to him. I mean, it's still early. You never know, but he just looks the part up there. He looks just like a big major league ball player standing in the plate, and he's off to a hot start. Couldn't ask for better. Maybe we were all a little underrating of him, at least me, when we were making our top 30 prospect list, because he is coming out hot.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a possibility we're going to look back on this in a few months and think we did underrate him. Back when we had our predictions, so I actually picked Nevin as a guy that I thought would graduate this year because of the fact that you can move him around a little bit. And as we've seen this year, the Orioles have had to go to their outfield, to their minor leagues for outfield help, even though they seemingly had so much of it at the major league level at the beginning of the year. Now, obviously, we're all hoping for a prolonged stretch where you have a healthy outfield of Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, and Anthony Santander at the major league level. And if the Orioles can stick around 500 until they get to that point, we'll see what they do after that. But I still think you're going to need some reinforcement from the minor leagues. And I think the fact that Nevin has always been the guy that has generally had a sound plate approach where he can draw a lot of walks, and you can move him around to different spots in the field, both corner infield spots, both corner outfield spots. I have to give him a shot to get some extended major league time this year, especially if he keeps hitting like this.
No doubt.
I was just going to say, yeah, you got like Pat Vlacas. He's on fire right now over the last few games, but look at the guys that the Orioles are running out there right now, especially if Mancini gets traded, something like that. It's going to be Tyler Nevin time.
Can we talk about the guy in the Norfolk roster that needs to be called up tomorrow, though? Richie Martin. No, I'm joking. Jahmai Jones. Richie Martin did have a good play, though. I tweeted that video out. He had a really good defensive highlight today. He went deep to his right, back into the outfield grass, got it across the diamond to Tyler Nevin at first base. Nevin made a great stretch. Martin's had a couple really good defensive plays already in these first 2 games. He had a hit today, I think, in the first inning, but then he got picked off first base. He got caught stealing, which, okay. But no, Jahmai Jones, I mean, today, his numbers, he went 3 for 5 today with a home run, 2 triples, 3 RBIs, 2 runs. He had a fantastic day. I mean, I don't know what else. We're getting really excited about Grayson Rodriguez, and we didn't even watch that outing. We watched DL Hall. We get even more excited about the future, which we have a right to. It's been almost 2 years since we watched minor league baseball. We're excited about all these performances, but Jahmai Jones, on a serious note, needs to be called up tomorrow because he has nothing left to prove in the minor leagues. At worst, again, this also isn't a guy who I think you're looking at as a future all-star second baseman.
gonna say, yeah, he was killing it at the alternate site at those little scrimmages they had with the Nationals. And I mean, even last night, I feel like he crushed a ball that just missed. He just got under it. It was like warning track power. I think he thought it was going to go out. He was a little frustrated, but man, he's all over the ball right now. I know, he doesn't have the most sustained success at the upper minor league levels, but clearly he's doing something right now. So I agree. He should be up yesterday.
Yeah, this is someone who earlier in his career was actually considered a top 100 prospect. Granted, it was on the lower end. He was, as Bob mentioned, he wasn't able to sustain some of that success. But this is someone who has been seen as having some upside for a while. He looked good over a very, very small run with the Angels last summer. And so far with what we've seen at the alternate site, or what the numbers we've got now at the alternate site, what we're seeing in Norfolk now, and even a little bit we saw in spring training, the bat to me looks pretty good. And I just went back and I watched that triple from today. Hits that out to kind of right center field, gets around the bases quickly. You love that sort of athleticism, and that's not something the Orioles necessarily have with their middle infield depth, especially at the higher levels in the minor leagues. So I would be really curious to see if no one steps up and really claims this job, second base at the major league level, which so far no one is. How long do you hold Jahmai Jones down if he continues to hit? Because, and I think that this is the point that Nick was making, he's not a guy where you're worried about the service time. So if he makes your team better now and you feel like he is ready for the major leagues, there's really no reason to hold off. There's no long-term strategy to keeping him down there.
The Orioles are off on tomorrow, Thursday. I think, we're home against Boston, or are we in Boston after that?
Home.
Okay, I want him in Baltimore on Friday.
I mean, the argument for promoting Jahmai Jones is Ramon Urias, Rio Ruiz, and Pat Valleca. I had to remember Rio Ruiz's name because I don't even care. I don't watch their at-bats. I don't watch them play the field. I just don't care anymore. Like Rio Ruiz, sure, he's a great guy. Love the hair last year, but that's gone. And I appreciate – I know.
Should not have cut it.
I appreciate that every time he's at his worst and someone steps up, Jahmai Jones hits a home run and 2 triples today, and Rio Ruiz says, I'm going to get myself a base hit. He always does that. He always falls for it. He's the X that says, I'm going to do better this time. Guess what? He's the same person, so just drop him already. No one wants to watch Pat Valleca play second base. I don't know why we're talking about the Major League roster anymore. Get rid of all of them. Bring up Jahmai Jones. It's time. It's done.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. There are plenty of dead fish in the sea.
Well, on that note, we're now going to go to our listener contest, which had a conclusion since our last show on Friday. And Nick, who was the winner of our free tickets promotion?
Yeah, we can shout out at Cousin Smith on Twitter. He retweeted our tweets. He followed us on Instagram, so had a couple entries. He was the random winner that I picked. Yeah, he chose next Thursday, I think May 13th. He's going to be at Bowie checking out a game on us. So hopefully you enjoy the game and get to see an Adley Rutschman home run.
A good chance he gets to see a good starting pitcher as well.
Yeah, exactly. So keep an eye out on our social media channels, in particular on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. In addition, be sure to check in over at BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com, where we'll have regular articles. Bob just had his latest 3 Up, 3 Down piece on Monday, and I have a story up earlier this week looking at some of the questions for the Orioles minor league system as kind of a preview piece. And we'll also be on the message board over there, especially in the minor league section. So be sure to join in there as well. And before we sign off for this episode, we want to discuss what we're looking forward to seeing over the next week. And I'll start with Bob on this one.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm looking forward to. But I think number one, most of all, is I want to see these guys that we haven't got to see pitch yet, like Garrett Stallings tonight, Kyle Bradish. I want to go back and watch these outings. I want to see Easton Lucas, the forgotten one, get his start, or at least get into a game, something. I want to just see these pitchers. That's what I want to see the most. And I just thought of something, by the way, that this cousin, what was his name? Sorry, cousin.
At Cousin Smith.
Cousin Smith, send us your scouting report of anything you want to. Anyone that goes to a game this year, send us your scouting report, and we'll we'll look at it at least, and we'll probably bring it up on the show. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the pitchers. There's plenty to look forward to, but I want to see these guys that I haven't had a chance to see yet.
Yeah, lots of pitching. That's what I've been mostly focusing on here. Brendan Hanifee goes in a couple of days. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see it go down and follow in the steps of DL Hall down there in Bowie. I didn't get to mention him earlier. I did want to mention Nick Vespi, though. And I tweeted out a video of some of his pitches yesterday in Bowie. He came in after the rain delay, so got 3 innings of work in. But he went 3 innings, no walks, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts. Those Altoona hitters, I mean, they late swings, herky-jerky hacks. I think Vespi got a sword in there as well. Like, this guy has never been on the top 30 list, I don't think. He's not a guy that ever gets talked about. He's a lefty with not a lot of high-velocity pitches, but a really good changeup. And he's pitched very well throughout his minor league career. And I just think he deserves a little bit more credit for fans. And so I think watch Nick Vespi. If he comes out of the bullpen again later this week or next week, definitely take a moment to watch him in Bowie.
It says a lot to me that he was at Delmarva with Drew Rahm, Grayson Rodriguez, all these guys that are in Aberdeen or still at Delmarva, and he's all the way at Bowie. So to me, that says they definitely see something in him. Maybe it's just because they think he could move quickly out of the bullpen, but it's a good sign.
I'm looking forward to seeing what we get from the rest of Norfolk's pitching staff, in particular Zach Lothar, because he did look so impressive in that 1 inning that we saw him pitch in the major leagues. But this is a guy who has had consistent success level after level in the minor leagues. So I really am anxious to see what that first AAA start looks like. I want to see what Alexander Wells does, and I want to see if Keegan Aiken is able to get over some of the struggles that we saw in spring training, and hopefully get back to the major leagues before too long. So really those 3 guys, to see what they could do, especially Lothar, is really what I'm looking forward to, is what do we see from Norfolk's pitching staff over the next week or so. And then, if the pitchers that threw in the last 2 games, the ones who struggled a little bit, are able to bounce back, that's good. But I think we're really curious to see what Aiken, Lothar, and Wells do with their runs in AAA this year.
I think one of them is going to start for the Orioles on Saturday. I'm curious to see which one.
It would be interesting. I'm probably going to say it's probably going to be Keegan Aiken, I think, as long as the fingers is good. I think he threw a side session or something the other day, so we'll see. But I don't know. Norfolk, get it together. Come on.
Well, we'll have plenty of reaction to whatever does happen over the next week on our next show. In the meantime, please be sure to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. Not just to get updates about the podcast, but also video highlights from what's going on in the Orioles minor league system, as well as some stats we find notable we want to share. And continue to check in on BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for the latest Orioles, Ravens, college sports, and professional soccer coverage. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to On the Verge.